Free to Be podcast. My name's Rachel Peru. Join me as I share a weekly dose of midlife inspiration, where you get to hear from some amazing people who are leaving a trail of inspiration along the way, breaking down midlife stereotypes and proving it's never too late to find your passion and purpose. From health, happiness, mindset to menopause, reinvention to rebelling, no subject is off limits. Living a life of liberty, free to be. Free to be whatever you want to be in midlife and beyond. Welcome back to a new week of Liberty Free to Be podcast. And this is going to be episode 136, which I can't believe. That's 136 amazing midlife women's stories that I've had the pleasure of sharing. And this week I'm really excited because I've also launched the Liberty blog. It's going to be another way that I can make sure that midlife women's stories, their voices, are going to be seen and heard. So if you would like to share your story but you don't feel like you want to come on the podcast, then please get in touch, because you can always write a blog. And this week's blog was by Zoe Davis, and Zoe has shared her story, her journey of self-acceptance and of stopping from sweeping things under the carpet to really embracing life and to tackling those things that have been holding her back for a long time, and she's now living a much happier life for it. So it's a really interesting and very relatable blog this week, so go check it out on the libertylimited.com. And I'm really excited that it's just another way. When I first started creating the platform, I wanted to make sure that it was a community-based space for women over 40 to share their stories and to be visible. And now the blog is just an extension of the podcast. I've got a long waiting list for the podcast, so it seems like the natural progression to give women the opportunity to use the blog post as their space and to share their stories, as well as my blogs too. So lots going on in the Liberty world right now. And this week's guest is somebody that I've been, who's been part of my Step Out of the Bubble Facebook group for a while now. I've been following up. She's a fantastic hairdresser. She's an award-winning hairdresser, Kay Binnersley. But that's not what she's coming on to talk about today. Today she is coming on to talk about, and I'm going to have to look this up because it's a hard word to say, lichen sclerosus and vulva cancer. It's a subject that is not talked about enough, and we all know, the amazing work that Deborah James did around bowel cancer and lifting that taboo and the stigma. We're talking about it, and vulva cancer is still one of those things that we don't often hear in the media or people talking about out of shame, out of embarrassment. It still has that stigma. So Kay Binnersley is going to be sharing her journey and her story of discovering she had lichen sclerosus and what it actually is, why it's so important that we all know more about it, and how we can help. So it's going to be a really interesting conversation this morning. Grab a coffee and enjoy. So good morning, Kay. How are you doing?
Good morning, Rachel. I'm doing really well, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. It's so nice to have this conversation today with you, because obviously you're in the Step Out of the Bubble Facebook group. We've met on social media, so I already know a little bit about you through connecting there, but it's lovely to have this proper conversation today. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yes, I am as well. It'd be wonderful to talk to you. I'm quite excited about it.
So I ask all my guests before we get going, so that people have a flavour of who Kay is. How would you describe yourself in 3 words, and why?
Gosh, fun-loving, caring, and creative. Fun-loving, I love to have fun with friends, family, acquaintances, people that I meet, enjoyable days and times out, and just try to enjoy life. Creative is obviously my art of hairdressing. I love to be creative. And caring, I really like to be caring towards people and try to support people. I always think if we can just go through life each day and just do something kind to somebody, then that's a good thing. That's what we're here for, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And for anyone that's not watching this on YouTube, if you're listening, I'm talking to Kay now. She has got the most gorgeous pink hair, bright red lipstick, and the fun and the creativity is there visually to see, and you look gorgeous.
Thank you.
So before we're tackling a serious subject today, I've already said in the introduction, it's a subject that really doesn't get covered enough, and it's so important right now to get this conversation out there. Before we really kind of delve deep into this conversation, let's have a little bit of background story about who Kay is, what your background is, what you actually do, your passion for hairdressing.
Yeah, so I'm a hairdresser. Started hairdressing at 13 years of age as a Saturday girl. It was actually the miners' strike was on, in the Yorkshire area. You can tell
Yeah,
from my voice, I'm a Yorkshire girl, and there was just no Saturday jobs whatsoever. The town I live in had been quite decimated with the strike, and I'd door knocked every salon, and they were like, "No, we can barely pay wages, let alone take staff on." So I said, "Well, let me do it for free. I have to be a hairdresser and I need to get some background." So that's what I did. I worked free of charge in a local salon till eventually times turned better. And I used to get paid £2 a week. And I worked Saturdays and evenings and anything and everything. And then went to college at 16, full-time college, and trained to be a hairdresser. And in between while I was at college, I'd stop people in the bus stop and say, "I love your hair. Can I please come to your house and wash and blow dry it for you? Or can I cut it?" And I was constantly out. By the time I started my own business at 18, I'd already built a network of people that I'd been practicing on. So I freelanced for quite a number of years, and did some teaching in hairdressing as well, did my advanced. And then my mum my mum has never been well from her being little. From being 10, I've always had to care for my mum. I was like a child carer. My dad passed away when I was 6, and she'd already had a family that was grown up. So they were 18, 16, and 15 when I was born. So I was quite a surprise to all of them. So I kind of was, the one left at home. So we collectively as a family did things, but I was the one there. So yeah, she took more poorly, and so it suited me being freelance to kind of care for her as well in between work. But then 26 years since, I bought a salon in the town on the high street where I first started as a Saturday girl, 4 doors away from where I started. And I've been there ever since. Love my hairdressing. I teach hairdressing still. I teach in colleges. I teach part-time. A couple of years since, I was very lucky. I kind of reinvented myself just before lockdown because I was kind of getting a bit lost along the way. When you get into your 40s and life really does change so much.
yeah.
And I'd been in perimenopause for quite some time, and you kind of lose who am I? What am I? And I'd lost me, and I'd lost my love of my hairdressing in that sense. I loved it, but I wasn't as passionate. So I decided to change everything about. I had a vision of becoming a one-to-one working salon, really dedicating to that one guest that was in. Didn't know I was going to do it because I was usually doing 6, 7 guests a day. And
Yeah.
then lockdown came. And for me, it changed everything. I mean, it was re-educating myself. I opened the business back differently. And then fortunately, I got a place on the Project X, which is with the British Fellowship of Hairdressers, and it's like called the ultimate finishing school. And I spent 12 months up and down in London working with hairdressers from around the world, really honing my skills up even more, which was just amazing. And then I revisited back to my bridal business because I'd done bridal for so many years. I had a little break, so I've gone back out bridal styling and winning awards, and totally changed my midlife completely and utterly. Yeah.
I love hearing stories like that. I love hearing stories that of women that aren't scared of that change, that really embrace it. And it sounds to me like you've absolutely done that. And moving forward, so you've got to this place where you're in a really good place mentally. You've got your business up and running. You're doing so many fantastic things, winning awards everywhere, and then you're hit with ill health, which
Yeah.
is usually the case when somebody's at the top of their game. Something comes along to try and drag you back down again.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Yeah. So in lockdown, if I sort of backtrack a little bit, in lockdown, I'd started. I wrote. I started with ulcers in my mouth, 1 or 2, and of course you couldn't see a dentist, and it was difficult to see a doctor. And so the pharmacist said, "Oh, I think it could be hormone related." And by the time I finally got in to see my dentist, that I was really suffering badly. And then September of last year, just before September, I had such an eruption of ulcers. I would always have at least 8 at a time,
Mm.
but I had to go to the local hospital, and the doctor stopped counting at 35. I
Wow.
was swollen. I couldn't talk. I could barely breathe, swallow anything. So they put me on a serious course of steroids and said, there's something autoimmune going off here. It's definitely related to the menopause. We're really not sure, but this is how we're feeling. The orthodontist was the same. She was like, you can lose your hyaluronic acid from your lips when you're in the menopause and we're getting older. And that obviously keeps your mouth a little bit more healthier.
Mm.
So I had a few of those injections, which definitely helped. They've kept it at bay. They did loads of blood tests and nothing was showing up whatsoever. And then late October last year, I lost my sister, which was an utter shock for us as a family. And that rolled into Christmas, and none of us were well. And then the first week of January, I took so poorly. They even tested me for the strep A, which was going about at the time. But I just woke up this one morning and I had the most horrendous pain and sensation down in our lady regions. I knew there was something not right. I got a mirror and I was mortified because there were all these white ulcers everywhere, 15 of them. Where had they come from? How had they appeared just so like that? Got an appointment to see the local nurse, who was amazing, and she called it straight away. She said, I think you've got something called lichen sclerosus, but I am not a specialist. We need to get you in to see a doctor. We need to get you to a gynecologist. And she said, and I really don't even want to attempt to treat it because I want it to be visible. So can you imagine the immense pain? And I was not going to get any treatment. The local, she ran to the hospital to speak to the gynecologist, and they said, 10 weeks at least before we could even look
Oh,
at her.
goodness me.
So fortunately, my husband actually has a company health scheme policy. We rung that, and I was sent to the local private hospital within 2 days. It was amazing. And the doctor there, straight away, she said, I definitely think this is it. I could stake my career on it. But first of all, I need to get it under control. And then we need to do some tests. So she put me on quite a lot of creams and ointments and various things that I have to take on a regular basis. And then I went back a few weeks since, yeah, it will be a few weeks now. And the biopsies were taken, which I can assure you is quite a shock to the system. And it identified it was definitely lichen sclerosus, and that it wasn't in a precancerous state, which is very good. So then I was like, right, now I'm going to try and find out what this lichen sclerosus is, because up to then I didn't decide to research it because I thought it might not be this, and I could read what it is and maybe get myself into a state about something it actually isn't. So then when I started reading, I was like, oh, so the first signs obviously were actually the ulcers in my mouth, because there's something called lichen plantar, which is related to it.
Right.
But what it is ultimately is it is an autoimmune disease. There's no cure and there's no remission for it. 1 in 100 women will have it. 5 in 100 it will turn cancerous. The doctor told me that if it did turn cancerous before I was 60, I would be very unlucky. But after 60, the rate seems to be greater for turning cancerous. But the problem with it is we don't talk about it enough. So my lady regions, I call them my new, but everybody has a name for them. So reading all the information, it's clear from Lichen Sclerosus UK and vulva cancer that we have to use the appropriate name. So there was the campaign check your boobs, and of course there was the campaign check your poo, and we all kind of smile at all that kind of thing. But if you say to somebody check your vulva, they spit the drink straight out of the mouth. But there's no other way to describe it, because if I said to somebody, do you check your new, they're going to be like, pardon? What on earth is she talking about? So they're clear that we have to use the proper term for it, because it is so important that people understand this. But I've found so much out about this since getting it, and they had to take biopsies. Um, there's very little research into this, and this is why there's a petition. I haven't started the petition. The Lichen Sclerosus have started the petition themselves, but it's been very slow to get off the ground. It is growing a little bit since I sort of have been pushing it, and other people have. There's nearly 2,000 more signatures gone on there, but there's a timeline of the 9th of August to hit 10,000 signatures, and
Yeah.
that's just to get government to think about looking at it and start supporting some research into it. Nottingham University are desperate to get involved and do research. They're doing bits themselves without finances. And what I'm finding is that it's a cancer they have no markers on. So when these lesions come up and they have to take them away to make sure they're not cancerous, they take more of that vulva away because they aren't sure of the markers. So since I joined the Facebook group, which anybody can join, the Lichen Sclerosus and Vulva Cancer Facebook group, and then they have a very private group, which really women are really opening up to the problems they're going through. And in that private group, I was shell shocked. I kind of say to people, I'm late to this party. I'm in my 50s. There's people been dealing this with 10, 12, 13 years of bits of their vulva being cut away and cut away till there's hardly anything left. I've had messages from women that have said, the messages say they feel disgusting, they feel their life's been taken away from them, marriages and relationships are breaking up, the mental health situation, and we're not talking about it. We're being
That's
silent because we don't know. I said to it, in my industry, as you can clearly tell about me, we are real talkers. And I was saying to somebody, for an industry as big as we are, we cannot be silent. The
yeah.
hairdressing industry really has to get on board because, we have customers sat in those chairs, and who knows what they're going through silently. I've had so many of my customers reach out to me personally and say, I have this. Some of them have been customers of mine for 20 years.
Yeah.
And they've told me so many intimate things about themselves and their families, yet they've never told me that. And the majority of them said to me, please don't talk about it in the salon when I see you, even though we're just one-to-one.
Yeah.
I don't like to talk about it. My husband doesn't want me to talk about it. My family don't want me to talk about it. It's that level of embarrassment, isn't it?
It is, yeah, and that's when you started telling me about it, that's why I knew we had to have this conversation, because you're so right. There's so much out there about breasts and checking our breasts and breast cancer, and that's just a normal conversation now. The same with bowel cancer, that's all changed. And yet when it comes to vulva and talking about anything else kind of below our knicker line, then we all just come up and don't know what to say about it. And it's almost like we're made to feel ashamed of our bodies.
Yeah, and
And that's
that's the
ridiculous.
key thing in the sort of messages that I've received. And looking in that group and reading some of the posts, some days it's quite heavy. I have to kind of come out of it because I'm in and I'm not in that thought process of what will it look like in 10 years time, how will I be with this condition, because I'm one of these people is I can't predict that future. I
Mm.
can only live in the here and now. Yet these ladies that's 10, 12 years on, their life, it's been such a trauma. And then within that, I mean, it is definitely hormone related. It's predominantly in people, women going through menopause, etc. But there is younger ladies that are suffering.
Mm.
And again, that's hormone related when they start their periods or when they've had a baby. The hormone changes from there that it gives. And, there's young girls at 16 and 17, and I'm 54, and this is for the rest of my life. They're 17.
Yeah.
This is all of their life and their relationships and everything. And I just feel, I spoke to my husband before I decided to go public, and my daughter, because if they'd have said, no, we don't want you to talk about it, it's going to be too embarrassing for us, I wouldn't have done. Because
Mm.
people can be mean, can't they? You can
You
get
can.
trolled on media
Yeah.
and things like this. And my husband's like, no, no, you must do it. And my daughter, she made me laugh, and she said, well, Mum, everybody knows about your menopause. They've known about you having a menopause from the day it started. She said, so why wouldn't you talk about this to everybody? but but I am an open person. I mean, I've received messages from ladies that have said, thank you for being so vocal. You're brave. And what I've said to them actually is, no, I'm not brave. That's why I'm vocal. You're brave because you're dealing with this behind a closed door. You're not telling anybody. You're not
Yeah.
talking about it. You're getting up every day and dealing with it silently. I'm not a brave person. If I've got a problem, everybody needs to know about it because I want everybody to share with me and help me with that problem. So I'm far from brave talking about it. I'm actually weak because I can't, I just couldn't have kept that to myself.
Well, it's not a sign of weakness, that's for sure, because you do need people like you to create that ripple effect, to create change so that it is an open conversation, so that people, A, that are going through it don't feel alone, but also, like, I'd never heard of lichen sclerosis. I'd never heard of it.
Yeah.
And if we don't know these things are out there, particularly as we are going through the menopause and it affects so many women of this age group, we don't know what signs to look out for. We don't know what it could be. So you need voices like you to talk about it, which I think is so important.
Yeah, and people like yourself, giving us this opportunity to talk about it. You're in a fabulous position with media and that to have conversations, and all it's going to take is a little chink in the link where somebody says, "Just hang on a minute, we really need to push this. What are we doing?" And all of a sudden, that momentum grows, doesn't it?
Yeah,
And it does create awareness. It also, there could be somebody out there that didn't know anything about it. They have a conversation with somebody else who actually maybe has it, who then turns to them and says, do you know, I have this, and has opened up to somebody at least.
yes,
And that can be a big thing because, I can imagine the mental health effects of this on people can be and will be, quite traumatic. I suppose I'm lucky because I'm quite an upbeat, positive person. And I kind of, I've taken that spin that, well, aren't I lucky I'm 54 and got it? I could have been younger. And also, I kind of think that, your cards are dealt to you and you deal with them. An old chap always said to me, you can only play with the pack of cards you're given in life, and you can't play with any other. And that's it.
yeah,
And that's how I view life. Whatever happens, you've got to try and find a way through it, even if you kind of laugh about it in some respects. So I think for me, I'm fortunate that an upbeat person. I've got a very supportive family who are happy to talk about it. But some people don't have that, and that must
yeah.
be really difficult days for them.
Yeah.
You know,
Those
personally
days when
and
they can't get
mentally.
out of bed because they're in too much pain and they don't have anyone to talk to. You
Yeah.
can imagine the effects it has on their body confidence.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you do get painful days. There was days I could have quite easily ripped myself to pieces.
Mm,
If I could have got a knife and cut everything out, I would have done because that is the feeling it gives you. That
yeah,
intenseness, it is just crazy. But fortunately, I am getting the treatment. But that's another thing. The amount of time that some people are having to wait. I've been lucky that we was in a position, but
yeah.
there's people in that group that are waiting 36 months just to see a
Wow,
gynecologist
that's
in this
ridiculous, isn't it?
condition. Plus, the medical profession is not overly keen on, some doctors and that are not overly keen on prescribing the treatments because it's for life and it's costly,
Mm,
very costly. I'm having to sort of cajole my doctors along, and my specialist has had to write another letter saying she has to have this treatment
yeah,
because it's a lesser of two evils. The majority of the treatment's steroids. So I totally understand that the doctors are concerned constant use of steroids is an issue. But without them, then this condition will worsen, will probably turn to cancer. So that's just as bad as having to keep up with the steroids. So we've got to have a strong voice on this. We've got to shout out for all those people that aren't getting the treatments they need, that are really battling surgeries, that are not happy to give them
yeah,
the medication that we need. So it's all-round holistic approach to raising some awareness and people understanding.
What would you like to see change?
I would like to see, first of all, I would definitely like to see some input financially from the government for research, because if the universities could get the research money and get the markers on it to
Mm,
start with, when they're taking these biopsies, they wouldn't be taking as big an area away.
yeah,
And also, there's talk that they could probably even identify this without even the level of biopsies they're using. They're looking at other methods. So if that funding was there to help that would have a massive impact. If they could laser these lesions,
yeah,
imagine. And they're talking that they think that would happen within, time.
mm,
So imagine how much different that would be for all of us, that we don't have to have these biopsies. I had 4 biopsies, and it's not pleasant, and you're stitched up and it's very uncomfortable.
yeah,
So I would certainly like to see that happening. The petition obviously gaining some momentum and getting that in front of the government, but the government actually realizing this is, when they say, 1 in 100 is rare and 5 in 100 will turn to cancerous. Now, that's not rare.
no,
That's not rare at all. In a small village of say 12,000 people, and 6,000 of them are female, well, do the maths on it.
yes, yeah,
It's not rare. So we really need to talk about this. And I think, talking about it and using that word, vulva, we will normalize it.
yeah,
We will
absolutely,
normally. Can you remember sort of when they talked about testicular cancer? Everybody was kind of like, ooh,
yes,
like that. But now it's a normalized word, isn't
yeah,
it?
yeah,
And I think we've got to normalize this so that women can talk about it, and that people understand what it is and people are aware, because it often goes misdiagnosed as really bad thrush and various things like that, and
well,
it
that's the
goes
thing, isn't it?
on and on and on.
Yeah, because at the menopause, lots of women do suffer from cystitis and thrush, and put up with it rather than going back to the doctors. They just deal with it themselves and let it go on and think, oh, this is just part of what I've got to go through. But actually, they need to get it checked out at the doctors because it could be
Then
something else.
this is it. Yeah, it is having them conversations, and kind of also having that conversation with the doctor as well, because that the doctor, at the best will in the world, doctors don't know everything. They can't possibly know everything. So that if you kind of can say to your doctor, "I'm concerned. Could it be lichen sclerosus? Could you find out?" That might be something that doctors never come
Yeah,
across before, and kind of say, "Actually, do you know what? I don't know about this, but let's find out."
yeah,
I was fortunate that nurse that day, she had heard about it, and she did, and she
mm,
kind of said, I don't know about it, enough about it, but I've heard about it, and I've got a feeling this is what you've got, but I want to get you to the right person. If I hadn't have seen her that day, some of the doctor might not thought it was that. They might have said, "Oh, I think it's thrush, and you've got a cystitis
yeah,
infection, blah blah blah,"
yeah,
and it could have gone on for a while. So I think us knowing about it and being aware of it, even if that we just help, say to the doctor, "Do you think it could be something else? Do you think I've got something else?" But I would like us to normalize it, and
mm,
as women be able to talk about it as well, and talk to younger women about it,
yes,
so that they know, because I'm sure if we'd have all known what were coming in this menopause when it hit us,
yeah,
I mean, taking all the vitamins and everything
yeah.
at 20. No, nobody knew what were coming, did they?
Who have you found? Have you found people on social media that have really kind of inspired you on this subject? Are there kind of influencers out there already talking about it, or is it still slow to pick up? Because
It's
usually
still,
social media can be a really good place for things like this, can't it?
yeah, it's still slow to pick up, really. I think that I think that maybe even the influencers are not quite sure how do they tackle this out, because you've got to level it in the right position as well, haven't you? Because um, it has got so many connotations to it, hasn't it?
Yeah.
So you've got to be careful. So there's no sort of really big influencers. Obviously, Dr. Imran Khan.
Yes.
Yeah, he is doing bits in that group. If you go into the group, the one that the public can go into, he is talking in there. He does pieces about it, which is really, really good.
Yeah,
But I think we need to get it out in that media,
yeah.
get it really in front of some people that can really make that difference.
Well,
Some
you
big
are the woman for the job,
influencers.
Kay, definitely. You're doing amazing
I'm
stuff. Really
emailing everybody. I'm,
good.
I'm emailing everybody, trying to get somebody. I keep saying, if I can just get on Chris Evans' show, somebody will know him because a petition will be filled in no time with him,
Yeah,
wouldn't it? And,
yes,
and the reason I mentioned Chris Evans is because he does so much work on his morning show. He's very much into the mind, the body, the well-being, and things like that. But it doesn't have to be in particular. It's just getting in front of audiences where people will talk
yeah.
about it, and that's the key thing. We have to talk about it.
So if anybody wants more information, where are the best kind of websites? Where are the best places for them to go
Yeah.
to?
So there is a Facebook group, Lichen Sclerosus and Vulva Cancer UK, and that has so much information on there, and links to other reports, etc. If you are a sufferer of Lichen Sclerosus and you're listening to this and you haven't joined that, please do. But also, then if you private message them, they will reply to you, and there is another group that is purely for the sufferer. So the
Yeah,
first group is for anybody to learn and get educated about this.
yeah,
The other one is purely for the people that are suffering from it, because within that it's very private, and there's a certain level of trust that conversations in there are private. I've
yeah,
touched on some bits of them, but not anything that's sort of
yeah. Personal.
so that's the first places to go. The NHS have got information about it, but I think that group is so good because there's so many women in there. I think there's 8,000 people in that
Wow.
group. So that shows you,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
how many people have got connections to it or have it, and I think that number is even greater than that. They just don't even know about it.
yeah.
There is a petition. The petition can be found on there, and obviously I can send you the link, and you
Yes, do,
can,
and I'll put all these links in the show notes and share on
yeah,
social media and get
yeah,
people to sign the
yeah.
petition because the research is needed and the funding for that has to be supplied because it's so important to get that on the radar.
Yeah, definitely. And if every person, I always say, if one person, everybody has at least 10 friends in their groups, in their messenger box. If they sent it to 10 friends and they all sent it to 10 friends,
Yeah,
can you imagine how exponential it will be? But time's running out because we've got till the 9th of August
right,
for that
okay.
petition date. And so there's I last checked and we were about 5,400. So we're still a long way to go.
Yeah,
But it was only at about 3,500 a couple of weeks since. So there's been
yeah,
a big one of the ladies in the who formed the original group, Lichen Sclerosis, she's also just done a podcast as well. So that's obviously,
yeah,
the more we can talk about it, the better it is. But yeah, and I just want women to don't try not to feel lonely about it,
yeah,
because ill health can be a lonely place, can't it? And
yeah,
when
it can.
somebody tells you you've got an autoimmune disease and there's no cure and there's no remission for it, and that's it for the rest of your life, it can really, really floor you, can't
Yeah,
it?
it can. Yeah. And the fact that it is and a body part we don't talk about the vulva, it's something that we've just been society has from generation to generation, it's something that we've just not talked about.
Yeah,
So that just adds that extra layer, doesn't it, of
yeah, that extra
recognition.
layer of silence.
Yes, yeah. But we need to
Uh,
break. So you are doing an amazing job. Thank you so much, Kay. So what's
Thank you.
next for you for the rest of summer? Have you got some exciting projects planned?
Yeah, I've just done some more award entries. They've all gone in. Very, very busy with weddings. Super booked up with weddings all summer. Some nice family days out, because that's important. Spending time together as a family is very
Yeah.
important. And then in mid-September, 2 weeks in Lake Garda with family,
Oh,
making memories. So yeah, busy, busy summer. Lots of lovely events, festivals to go to, and just enjoying life. I've always been a person that kind of, so that, kind of we're only here for so long, and we've really got to try and enjoy it. And that was even brought home even more last year when I lost my sister, as we did. I kind of decided that as much as I love work and I'm a workaholic, I try now to spend more family time as well. I've got a little granddaughter. She's 18 months old.
Oh,
So
gorgeous.
it's lovely watching her grow up. She's she's a little treasure. So yeah, family and just having a wonderful summer. I love every season. I love to do all the summery things, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's great, especially when we get nice weather
Oh,
that we're
so
having at the
nice, isn't it?
moment.
I know, it's gorgeous. Well, listen, I hope you have a really lovely summer and that your symptoms are kept at bay and that you can carry on enjoying life as much as you are doing. And thank you so much for sharing, and I'll share all the links and everything. My last question that I ask all my guests is free to be. What does it mean to you, Kay?
Free to be the person you really want to be, with no holds or ties and no fears.
Fabulous. And how can people come and find you, Kay?
Yeah, I'm on social media, Kay Binnersley Hair and Kay Binnersley Hair Bridal, and also Kay Binnersley Hair Education. So I'm on the social media. I do have a website as well, so they can find me there. And can I say a big thank you, Rachel, for doing this? I know you're a very busy lady, and for fitting this in for me and responding so wonderfully about it, and helping raise awareness. It's super key. And as you know, I've said before, I'm a mass follower of your podcasts anyway. I've listened to them all the time. In lockdown, they certainly were keeping me going when you was doing them and that. So thank you for doing these podcasts, because they are great. It's lovely to listen to the people that you get in. It's inspiring. It really is. So, but thank you so much for doing this. I'm very appreciative.
No, it's my pleasure, Kay. I just, the whole point of setting up the podcast was to inspire and to motivate and to help educate women in this period of life. And that's exactly what you've done today. So thank you so much for sharing and for your honesty too. So keep up the amazing work, and I will see you soon.
Thank you. See you soon.
Keep
Have a lovely
Take
summer.
care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. I'm super grateful for Kay sharing her story. It takes courage to come and step out of your comfort zone and to share things in public, especially when it's something about your physical being and a subject that still has this stigma attached to it. Whenever we talk about the vulva and women's body parts, it still has this stigma. And I love the fact that Kay is bravely out there sharing her story to help so many other women, because it's the subjects, like Kay says, that the doctors don't fully understand yet, and it can be so mistreated, misdiagnosed, and the complications of that can ultimately lead to vulva cancer. So it's a really important subject, and I'm so grateful for Kay for coming on and sharing her story with us today. If you'd like to know more, I'm going to leave all the links on the show notes as well. And of course, I will be leaving the petition. I know I've just had a quick look at the petition. So far, they've got 6,200 signatures, and they need 10,000 for the government to even make a response to it. But it's around making sure that the government help funding so that there's more knowledge around this for treatment, because this is something that's not going to go away for people that have been diagnosed with lichen sclerosus. This is a long-term condition. There's no cure for it at the moment, and it can cause a lot of distress and uncomfort in people's lives. So the more that the government can do to help research and funding, the better it's going to be, particularly when we know it affects women over 50 in particular. It's just another area that over women 50 get overlooked, and it needs to be diagnosed early so that people can get the help and the treatment that they need. So another really interesting week. I will be back next week, but in the meantime, don't forget as well, before I go, the Liberty Free to Be t-shirts are now online for sale, and I'm so pleased. We've partnered with a company called T-Mill, who are really sustainable. They only print to demand, so there's no excess, and it's all organic cotton, made in the UK. And if you want to be part of the Liberty Free to Be gang, then go and grab your t-shirt. And we do have a Free to Be range for men as well, so I will leave the shop links in the show notes. I'll be back next week, but in the meantime, keep being fabulous. Thank you for listening to the Liberty Free to Be podcast. I hope it's left you feeling inspired. If it has, why not come and join my free Step Out of the Bubble Facebook group? It's a safe space where you can connect with other women, all at different stages of their midlife journey, supporting and inspiring one another. Oh, and don't forget to come and say hello on Instagram at RachelPeru1. I'd love to know what free to be means to you. If you're loving the podcast, please don't forget to subscribe, rate and review. Your support is much appreciated. I'll be back next week, but in the meantime, keep being fabulous.